won't play anything but songs of love. Of Lautus sonus fain would I write, and fain of Cadmus would I sing. My lute is set on love's delight, and only love sounds every string. Of late my lute I altered quite, both fret and strings, for tunes about. I sung in fierce Alcides' might, my lute would sound no tune but love. Wherefore, ye worthies all, farewell, no tune but love. My lute can tell. His lute refuses to play anything. That's funny. We're reading from the Untuning of the Sky. Later on, when David has been thoroughly identified with Charlemagne, the good Angebert himself can become his court poet. Vatis Homerus amat David fac patulus versus. But it is the rousing of the sluggish instrument muse, which is of consequence here. The similarity of Wyatt's refrain to other such instances seems hard to discount. My lute, awake, perform the last labor that thou and I shall waste, an end that I have now begun. For when this song is sung and past, my lute, be still, for I have done, as to be heard, where here is now, as lead to grave in marble stone, my song may pierce her heart as song. Soon should we then sigh and sing or moan. No, no, my lute, for I have done. And throughout the poem, it is the poet's power of articulateness that is intended for the instrumental reference. For if the literal allusion to the instrument being played and sung to its present, it distracts not to at all, but from the implied metaphor. Similarly, the more and less explicit reference to an instrument, actually played by the courtier poet in the other lyrical, becomes identified in the course of the poem with the poet's own voice. He starts out by insisting on full responsibility for the content of his songs. Blame not my lute, for he must sound of themes or that as liketh me, for lake of wit the lute is bound to give some tunes as pleases me. His lute, though my songs be somewhat strange, and speak such words as touch thy change, blame not my lute. And as he proceeds to embroider the image, the weight of that responsibility grows heavier. My lute and strings may not deny, but as I strike them, they must obey. Break not them then so wrongfully, but wreck thyself some wiser way, and through the songs which I delight, do quit thy change with rightful sprite. Blame not my lute. But this is only that he may turn on the lady who has injured him. Blame but the selfie. There's a selfie. Blame the selfie. Blame but the self. And finally conclude with the warning that if she break the strings of his instrument in wanton revenge, he has already possessed himself for the lady's benefit of strings for to strange my lute again. The lute seems to be identified not with a muse here, but with the poetry of complaint itself. And the whole lyric might be said to sum up the defense of the kind of courtly poetry whose only aesthetic was the justice of its accusations and ethical prescription. In the sonnet sequences of the last decade of the century, however, the implicit image of why it becomes an overt one, but the sonnet describing and invoking a lute would also tend to generate an attempt to extend for as long as possible a musical conceit, employing as many general musical terms as possible. For example, sonnet number 7. From Samuel Daniels, Delia, also set as a lute song in his brother John. Daniel's Book of Airs of 1606 starts out with a stated comparison and proceeds to work in other musical expressions. Like as the lute that is an ills dislikes, as is its art that plays upon the same. So sounds my muse, according as she strikes on my heartstrings, high tuned unto her fame. Her touch doth cause the wobble of the sound, which here I yield in lamentable wise, a wailing discount on the sweetest ground, whose due reports give honor to her eyes. I'll harsh my style, untunable my muse, harsh sounds the voice that prayeth not her name. If any pleasing relish here I use, that I judge the world her beauty gives the same. Oh, happy ground that makes the music such, and blessed hand that gives so sweet a touch. Here it is, the poet, who, in his muse's instrument, of course, and he describes his bondage to his lady muse in a manner quite the reverse of White's relationship to his lute in Blame Not My Lute. The conventional figure of heartstrings is almost a cliché, even at this period. It's a cliché. And the punning use of touch designate both a passage of musical sound and a caress is almost in the process of becoming one. But the association of music with the poetry that comprises the sonneteer's soul discourse is unmistakable, and in this a link with the less fictional world of White's lyrics of complaint may be discerned. The figure of the sonneteer himself as his lady's instrument becomes an almost automatic one, enriched only by the additional of more musical terms to the conceit and by embellishing the tropes to the diction. In the 1590 version of Michael Drayton's idea, the 9th sonnet shows such an elaboration. Poem quote: Love once would dance within my mistress' eye, and wanting music fitting for the place, swore that I should the instrument supply, and suddenly presents me with her face. Straightways my pulse plays lively in my veins. My panting breath doth keep a meaner time. My quartering utters be the tenor stains. My trembling sinews serve the counter chime. My hollow sighs the deepest bass do bear. True diapason in distincted sound. My panting breath the treble makes the air, and discounts firm finally on the music's ground. Thus like a lute or viol did I lie, whilst the proud slain dancing galliards in her eye. There is a close connection between the conceit of this poem and the use of organic correspondences between instruments and their parts in the portions of the universe and the members of the human body as used by speculative writers. But the point in sonnets like these is always insistence on the love relationship as figured forth in the instrument-performer situation. And well, it might be for the love of the Petrarchian sonneteer, for his lady puts him always in a passive role, whereby Drayton uses the lute muse metaphor rather than the one of the instrument as self. My fair, had I not ernst adored my lute, with those sweet strings stolen from the golden hair. And by this he means to start out, quote, had you not been my real muse. This figure of the instrument as the self maintains itself not only in the love sonnet literature at the close of the 17th century, but continues to be even more common in devotional poetry, particularly that of metaphysicals. In the next 100 years, the relationship of poet to lady is simply transferred to one of prayer to God. But at the beginning of the 17th century, the instrumental concita takes on an interest of its own, as in the following sonnet of John Davies of Hereford from his Wittes Pilgrimage. Poem quote, John Davies. No please my mind upon his instrument, thought, waste, body, organ of my mind, no parts but such a holy discontent. My parts are so ventured by thee in thy kind, my longus, the bellows drawn and nigh, but air that fills my windpipes, but with harsh complaints tending to diapasons of despair, which often die for that wind often feigns my art and brains, the stops that cause the mood. Too often stops, it often such moods they cause, as by the pangs of death are oft withstood, through which the organ's voices doth sinking pause. But if thou sweet will have it sweetly rise, then breathe sweet air into it as it dies. Here the relationship of player to instrument is seen as that of the psyche to body, and the conceit is that of an organ. But the puns are many and varied, including those of parts and stops, air, sweet, and the quibble on the two senses of mood, mode, and key, and mood and feeling. The whole notion of organ is itself taken in a specifically musical and general sense. Also, the body is the organ of the instrument of the mind, and the limitation of these terms to their musical sense provides the basis of the metaphor. Whether in the case of abstractions such as harmony or of terms like instrument, this process of localizing the musical application of a more general term forms the broadest connection between the speculative and the practical music in both poetry and prose of the Renaissance. We're stopping on page 135. Did we learn anything about the instruments and the muses? We had been reading about the self, the instrument, the muses, the poetry of the Renaissance, but it leading up to devotional poetry in the next century, the untuning of the sky, $3.45 by John Hollander. It's not expensive. Ideas of music and English poetry.